So basically, everybody is kind of treating Maurice and Sovalis almost like tour guides of the city at this point, is what it sounds like. Okay,
You know
I
as
mean
well?
everybody but our leprechaun who is doing his own thing.
Wait, let's go to Fergal real quick. Fergal deserves some screen time. Let's go to Fergal.
Yeah, you know what? What does he get up to?
What is? I mean, Fergal is basically just talking with Volothamp at this point. Brain fart. So what? Yes. So it's basically you're talking with Volo and Three Strings. What else are you doing while you're there? Are you just ordering a few drinks and kind of talking over what's there? Because
Yeah, I'm definitely ordering a few whiskies. I'll be questioning them about work around town. Where would be good spots for business.
okay, Volo is very into his book and is kind of oblivious, you're finding, to the other patrons of the tavern. However, you're noticing that Three Strings actually seems to be pretty, maybe not well acquainted, but he's definitely heard things about the people that are there. He tells you that the dwarven man on the far side of the tavern, he says that that man over there is Bergus Fordhammer. He's come through the town a few times. He's whenever he's here, he's always sitting in the tavern looking for work and such. And you hear from Three Strings that Bergus apparently is pretty well liked by the guilds, and he's a member of not one, not two, but actually 4 different guilds in the city, which is very rare. And Three String actually points out the backpack that's next to his chair. That's not only like a backpack that's twice the size of what you would normally see someone carrying, but it's also just like filled to the brim with what looks like different types of tools. In fact, you even see like there are small hammers, axes, and various other like prongs, tongs, things of that nature, all kind of sticking out. Like it's just been packed, just filled to the brim with these tools. And he is knocking back a tankard while looking over some rolled up scrolls on his table. It looks as if he has he's using some of the empty tankards to kind of hold the scrolls from wrapping back up and such. Three Strings also tells you that the 2 women at the table near the portal in the middle, he tells you that the girl with the bear cowl, he's not sure. He's heard her name is Yumi, or at least that's what the elf woman calls her. He says the elf is named Rana, and she seems to be a mercenary of some sort. They tend to hire out their work for various odd jobs around the city, and he recently heard them talking about a notice board over in the castle ward. He says he himself really has no interest in that sort of thing, so he's not exactly sure where it is. But he says if you're looking for work, you might try to ask them where this board is, or maybe see if they'd like to hire you on.
No. That's good advice.
You probably talked about this a little bit, like while Volo went to the bathroom or something, and that would probably happen, every now and then, as he has no idea how much he's drinking because he is so interested in talking about his book, and he has not stopped for like the past 2-3 hours. At this point, I feel like you probably know quite a bit about spirits, specters, ghouls, and various undead things. How much you've actually retained, I don't know. So what else are you doing while you're there?
Well, let's see here. Definitely hit up Burger. Agreed. Get follow another drink and might be back another time. Talk more about Or he'll talk more whisper.
Sure. Yeah. Volo, you find like a good ending point in Volo's conversation, and just like quickly excuse yourself because you realize that if he starts talking again, you might not get another chance for like an hour or something, right? So
Yeah.
you easily can kind of excuse yourself from there. It's a little tricky to do, but I'm sure you can manage a little bit. You are a relatively charismatic fellow, so you can excuse yourself, stand up, and go talk with Bergus over on the side. How are you approaching him? What are you saying?
I'll slip up and ask, "Can I get you a drink?"
He looks up from his scrolls and sees no one is there, and then kind of like looks over, realizes you're a halfling, and he says, "Now that's the way you introduce yourself to a dwarf. Aye, of course you can." And he says, "Have a seat here."
Of course. Treat others as you'd like to be treated.
Bergus gives a good hearty laugh, and he says, "This is why us small folk gotta stay together, aye?"
I'll take this.
He says, he sticks out one giant, like, meaty hand that is covered with calluses from obviously doing a lot of work and physical labor with his hands, and just introduces himself. He says, "Bergus Forgehammer of the Forgehammer clan."
Name's Fergus. I'm a cobbler. By trade in the inn.
He says, "Good, honest work." He likes that. He says, "Have you, by any chance, have you a membership with the guilds here?"
Not of yet. I've only arrived in town recently.
He says, Good. Well, if you're looking for work, you best do that sooner rather than later. The guilds are rather vicious, but they could be good folk when you're on their good side."
I'll keep that in mind.
He says, "Aye,
Hey.
do that."
Yeah, any that I might approach?
He says, "Well, if you're short on money, you might want to be careful which one you approach first." He says, "Or if you're like him, they seem to just approach him, and he's been given guildships or memberships to 4 different guilds. He had no idea that the humans were so useless that they need a dwarf to carry on 4 different guilds."
I don't know, that sounds a bit right to me.
He says, be on the lookout for which guild you might want to join. They can give good work, and they offer good pay for their services.
Oh, sure thing. Wouldn't be able to tell me a bit about the guilds.
He says he would. He says, as far as he knows, there's four dozen guilds or thereabout. He says they kind of run the gambit as far as what they are concerned. Give me 1 second to grab my book.
If you can think of a name, there's a guild for it.
Fair enough.
He's not wrong. It's almost comical how many guilds there are. So you're asking Bergus about the guilds, right?
Yeah, maybe try and specify any ones that he particularly knows about that are quite decently paying and aren't likely to try and, fuck you.
Sure. He says the guilds have been around for a long time. He himself is part of the Smiths Guild, the Armor Forgers Guild, the Brewers Guild, and the Carpentry Guild. The actual names for these are the Vintners, Distillers, and Brewers Guild. What's the Smiths one? Wait a second. The most careful order of skilled smiths and metal forgers. Where's the armor one? Here we go. Order of cobblers and corvusers. What's a corvuser?
I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah, I actually don't know what that word is.
Corvisor. Oxford says that it is. Give it a load. Oh, good. It is locked. A boot and shoe make.
Just look at the word.
That's just what it says on
That actually makes a lot of
Oxford
sense.
reference.
That
Let me
makes
see.
sense. Okay. So he does tell you that the Order of Cobblers and Corvisors is a thing. And he himself is part of the, what do we say, the Vintners, Distillers, and Brewers Guild, the most careful order of skilled smiths and metal forgers, I just saw it here, the Splendid Order of Armorers, Locksmiths, and Finesmiths, and also the Master Miners Guild. So he has all of those under his belt. He says he's been working with metal since he was old enough to hold a hammer.
Very impressive.
He says he likes to think that he is quite impressive for what he's done. He's lived long enough that this is his last major journey out of Galdegrim. He's just kind of looking for his last bit of inspiration for his next big work, masterwork. He says he always goes on these trips when he's looking for some inspiration of sort. He just got a bit of a roadblock this time, and he's not sure what to work on. He kind of like gestures to the table in front of him where the scrolls are, and you can now see the scrolls are various different kind of like blacksmithing schematics and designs. Several of them look like they are scribbled, while others of them look as if they've been done almost masterfully by maybe a scribe of some sort. And he says he brings these with him to help look for something, but nothing has struck him.
Oh, that'd be something new, isn't it?
He said, yeah, he's looking for something new, something to bring his clan fame. He wants to make this journey worth it. His wife doesn't like it when he does this, but he says she understands. His work is important to him.
No, keeps us all going.
He agrees. He says it does. He says, what are you doing in town?
Well, I just arrived in the town, exploring a little. Thought I'd set up a wee business, make a wee bit of money, make a name for myself.
He says this is the place to do it. Lots of opportunity here in Waterdeep. He says, he remembers a time when he was younger that he did much the same thing. He actually came to Waterdeep some 50 years ago, and that's when he first learned about the guilds and such, and kind of made his home here for a bit. Are you going to stay here and just kind of listen to his stories on everything his family has done to make them famous?
No, I'll try and steer the conversation to any other suggestions for work. I do have friends who are a bit of a mismatch of
He says that their work has kind of been slow for the guilds as of late due to all the issues around the city. He says there's been talk of the Zentrum having trouble keeping the lower, shadier bits of the city in check in where they want it. Apparently there's some thugs coming in doing, well, gang things and trying to take over the Zentrum's business, but honestly, he has no real interest in that. He says it's just a bit of news. You could probably learn that more from someone who really cares about that kind of thing.
No worries, I'll keep that in mind. Enjoy your drink. I'll move on here, and I've got other people to talk to.
He says, now that's a good way to excuse yourself, too. He raises his hand and calls Bonnie over. He says, Lass, another drink on this one.
I will wave to her.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So what else are you doing?
Well, I will also visit the mercenaries, Rana and
Yumi.
Yumi.
Yeah, man.
Sure. So you can head over there. We're going to go ahead and cut back over to the rest of the group. So you guys are heading to Coralon's Crown. And we'll say that Maurice has kind of got you guys over there pretty easily. It's not a terribly far walk from the Temple of Beauty anyway. So you head in, and you guys finally meet Fala. A rather nice looking wood elf.
Mr. Follow, you here?
You guys walk in. The shop isn't terribly large. There is Fala at the hold on a second. Fala's there at the front counter, looking over a large book. Could be a ledger or possibly a recipe book. You're not really sure. It's kind of a larger tome wrapped in leather, old pages. As you enter inside the store, you see that on either side of the store are almost like potted areas. So there are shelves with small potted plants, and they give off very aromatic scents. It smells very fresh. It smells like springtime in here. And then below these, you'd actually see like these long trays filled with soft earth, and many of these plants seem to be kind of like commingling with each other. All of them are kept relatively small, and you can see that there's like a pair of shears just kind of stuck into the dirt nearby, where she can easily pick up the shears and kind of pull off a sprig or two of whatever the plant is. And behind the counter, further in the back, it looks as if there are rows set up in the middle of the shop, and there's a large skylight in the center that gives a decent bit of light to all of the plants in here. The plants in the center are, again, bigger, but almost like there's large, like 2-foot tall troughs filled with soft dirt, maybe some fertilizer of some sort. And these seem to be like the larger plants, possibly bearing some types of fruit here and there, or other flowers and such. But they seem to be kind of like separated to like fruits and certain things over here, and just kind of gradually going over toward like flowers and such. But as you guys enter into the shop, a bell rings, possibly attached to the door, and Fala looks up from the book to see all of you guys enter in. Fala immediately says, "Oh, Maurice! Oh, you brought friends! How nice!"
Yes, Master Follow. These are my, I guess recent friends. We met at the Yawning Portal, spent a time at the baths, and then I remember I had some business that needed to be taken care of at the temple. Everyone, this is Fala Lefari.
Lafalier.
Lafalier. They said Lafalier. They are my mentor, confidant. I basically owe almost everything. I'm also an apprentice to them as well. This is Sobolus.
Hello.
Fergal's not here in a moment. You have Hopkin, Treya.
Pleasure to meet you.
Earlier, and also Ka and Void.
Fala gives a very pleasant and sweet smile, and kind of puts a hand over their chest. Just, Maurice, you're embarrassing me in front of your friends, please. And Fala extends a hand to each of you and introduces themselves as Fala.
Master Fala, I was actually coming to check to see if the order was ready for the Temple of Sune.
Fala says, "Yes, of course." They reach under the desk and pull out a small sack, like a cloth or canvas sack, with a leather drawstring thong on top, and just kind of hands it over to you and says, "They were actually waiting for you to come and get it anyway. So it's been ready for a few hours now."
Oh, so the list is you're one of the representatives of leasing your here.
Yes, thank you. And he takes it. It's like, we appreciate your help. Everything that you do allows us to help people bring out their beauty and stay healthy and such, and it's very appreciated.
They say, of course, anything for the temple. It's just all you have to do is ask.
Bless you. Thank you.
Well, is there anything else that needs to be taken care of today? Any other orders? Anything of notoriety that needs to be taken care of for the shop?
Follow says, not at the moment. They're actually working on a recipe. Some guards have been attacked recently. There's been more things going on between the Zentrum and that Xanathar guild, or whatever they're calling themselves. Some guards apparently happened to find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time and tried to stop something from happening. They're not sure, but they're working on a large order right now, and if you maybe come by tonight before the shop closes, they'll have a delivery ready.
Yeah, sure. That'll be no problem. No problem at all.
Follow says you might actually need an extra pair of hands. It is a rather large order.
I will be happy to help for my temple.
I'll help as well.
Are you
Thank
sure?
you.
It won't get in the
Yes.
way of your duties.
No, not at all. This is part of my duties. There's nothing to worry about. And I thank you, Harpatkin, for volunteering.
After offering all that wine, it's the least I can do.
Follow says three sets of hands should more than do it, of course.
Do you, sir?
Follow chuckled again. Just, well, 4 hands will most certainly do what's needed. Sure, come by at sunset. I'll close up a little early to make sure that you guys are set up properly.
All right. We'll make sure to be by. Did you need anything more from the southern part of the city? Well, I accompany my friends back down. I can pick up on the way.
Follows thinks to himself for a second, kind of taps a finger on the book, looking over it a bit. Just, no, I don't think. Oh yes, actually there is something you could pick up. Could you possibly find a small container of seawater, preferably not too close to the shore, and if you could find fish scales, or even just a single fish would be fine, honestly. I could take the scales from it.
Okay. Pulls out a little piece of parchment, small container of seawater and fish scales. It doesn't need to be of a specific size, this fish or scales.
No, the fish from there should be just fine. Thankfully, the recipe doesn't call for a specific type of fish scale. Just anything that's there. If you happen to find some, that'd be great, but they do need to be mostly intact.
Is this sort of potion water breathing?
Follow says, well, actually, the Temple of Ogma has asked me to research a certain potion to see what it does. It supposedly has something to do with water, but they're not entirely sure. Their research only went so far, so they asked an experienced alchemist to try and recreate potion, and they plan to test it.
Lady Somewhere, I know you probably don't wish to go near the sea too much after the past year, but would you know how we could, do you know if there's anyone that would be selling far off seawater?
Oh, of course. I'm pretty sure there's a few businesses that's under my family's directive through shipping company. I'd be able to help us for sure with that one. Paula, is there any particular fish scales that may work best for your research, or would a variety be better?
No, no particular variety. The recipe didn't specify, so I believe it's just asking for any fish scales as long as they are intact.
Oh, of course.
Once I create the
Uh,
recipe, I should be able to see if it works or not and then narrow things down.
Of course, and if they do ever need more for whatever you're whipping up, you can always contact my family. I'm sure we'll be happy to help to open a supply line for you.
Oh goodness, who your family? Who are they?
Yes, I'm Treya Stormweather, the Stormweather family.
Fala blinks for a second and just oh goodness. I Lady Stormweather then.
Yes, Father. It is a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah,
I
I didn't know either. So
Fala gives a little bow, and I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was speaking to a noble.
Oh, stand no heed to that. It's perfectly fine. Any friends of my friends are a friend of mine.
special
Well-
privileges, Master Follow. Special privileges.
Fala gives a bit of a chuckle. Just I see. Please, I thank you for excusing the mistake. I didn't realize whose presence I was in.
Oh, it's no problem at all. You also mentioned there's some trouble happening with your guards right now. Would you happen to know anyone we may be able to speak to get more information on that?
Fala says, not necessarily. I was actually approached by one of the captains up toward the troll yard. They were discussing some problems in the field ward, though I wasn't necessarily sure what, and I didn't feel comfortable asking further. They seemed rather distressed by their comrades being in the place they were, so I just wanted to get the potion made to them as quickly as possible.
Of course. Thank you for your generosity for our guards. They're the ones who keep us safe. So thank you very much for both me and my family.
Fala says, of course, absolutely. If you do want to talk with them, I believe I spoke with Guard Merriweather in the troll yard. He might have been a captain. I forgot, honestly.
Oh, of course. If I make his way, I'll definitely speak to him about it. See if there's anything that we may be able to help with. But first, let's get your task done.